Welcome back to my channel for a hopefully very interesting Leica episode. And you see 4 cameras here in front of me on the table. Starting here, my Leica SL3, my Leica Q3 43, my Leica M EV1 and my Leica M11-P. And these 2 are special editions. This is the Safari Edition in Safari Green, and this is the Reporter Edition, also in green, but a different tonality. And I was invited to provide a keynote speech at the Leica Summit Switzerland in Bern. I, of course, did that. And here now I want to share the video from that live event where I talked about the ecosystem Leica created with these 4 cameras. So I will talk about similarities, common elements. I will also talk about differences, about areas of application of these 4 Leica cameras, and will in this way also provide guidance and provide hints and advice where and when to use one of these cameras. And hopefully for you, this will be an interesting episode. Let's kick this off. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, support my work. I'm super grateful for your support. Many thanks. All right, so Leica Summit Switzerland in Bern happens every 2 years. And there were a lot of top-notch photographers, Leica representatives. Dr. Andreas Kaufmann was there, who with his investment company is holding the majority of shares, but private shares, of Leica Camera AG. And of course, we had a lot of fun, but also a lot of education and very interesting content. Unfortunately, during almost my whole keynote speech, I had to improvise. It was all improvisation. And the reason was I had planned everything carefully. And on the presentation day on Saturday, I got up 5:15 in the morning and collected a bunch of illustrative charts and images I wanted to show when talking about the ecosystem created by these 4 Leica cameras. But the event was hosted in a conference center called the Paul Klee Center in Bern, and the technicians were not able, before my session, to connect my MacBook Pro via the HDMI slot to the beamer. And later it turned out there was a more general flaw, which they then were able to fix for the afternoon sessions. But for me, it was too late. So in the live recordings, which I'm going to show you in a moment, you will see all the time technicians coming in, coming out, standing next to me and trying to fix that projection and presentation problem from my MacBook Pro to the beamer. And don't get distracted by that, just go with the flow. And now I will immediately go into the live recordings. And since now I have the option to actually integrate in the video the images and the illustrative charts I wanted to show, you will also get to see them in the way it was originally planned.
Ladies and gentlemen, very welcome to this session. We are struggling a little bit with the technique, but we are pretty sure that it's going to work soon. So for those that don't know me, my name is Gülten Bart. I'm Managing Director of Leica Camera Switzerland. And this is a very special introduction to me because of 2 reasons. He's a friend of mine, and it is my first world premiere introduction because his YouTube channel, Mad Photographer, is, everybody nearly knows it. He has more than 500,000 subscribers, but he never showed his face.
For good reasons.
And he even went so far when we are at the Leica events, people would ask him, what are you doing? He would always tell, I work for Gülten. So that's why I called him my fake personal assistant. But still some people would always recognize his voice. And they would even call him the voice of Leica. We had it also. And we thought that's time that this voice get a face. So, please an applause for Matt.
All right, so we need the technician back because we cannot project to the screen at this point in time, which is unfortunate. It's all wired up. The way to help us out. Okay, I tried to do a little bit of an introduction in the meanwhile. So Grüezi miteinander, grüß euch. Meine Frau kommt aus Bern, insofern bin ich hier fast zu Hause. The lecture will be in English and it will be about the Leica ecosystem in a smaller proportion than you might think. So you see here 4 cameras. You see my Leica SL3, the posh one, reporter style, green, aramide, Kevlar type finish. My Leica Q3 43, and you see here the Leica M EV1 and the Leica M11-P, and that's what I will call here for the next 30 to 45 minutes the ecosystem, the Leica ecosystem. I need a chart to show you better what this all means, and we exclude other items. So those of you who occasionally sneak into my channel, you see I also speak about the Deluxe 8. We could talk about what manufacturing of cameras has in common with watches. So the Leica ecosystem, I don't want to do injustice to Dr. Kaufmann, is much bigger than what I'm showing you here. But it is, for me, the core of what I'm working with. And these 4 cameras, they all have their meaning, their purpose, and they also have, in my opinion, their strengths and good reasons to use them. And I would like to start with a little poll. It's okay if you out yourself as someone who is rich enough to own more than one of these models, right? But I want you to raise your hand if you shoot and own an SL3 or SL3S here in the room. Who is shooting with an SL3 or SL3S? That's less people than I thought. Who is shooting with a Q3? And we are agnostic here, 28, 43, monochrome. Yes? Much more, right? If I see this correctly, SL3 again? Q3? Yeah, I think that is a little more. Who of you is already working with an M EV1? Not too many. We come to that. We come to that camera. And by the way, this camera has a strap. Those of you who see my videos on channel, I'm not a strap person. I hate it. It completely distracts me around my neck. But this camera has a strap, because I think with this lens, which I want to show you, it's the perfect street photography camera. And who is shooting with an M11 or M11-P? Wow. And I saw a few of you had their hands up more than once, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I saw it. I saw it. So you're on watch. If you think about an ecosystem needs common sense and common denominators. And what have these 4 cameras in common? Let me ask you. You are free to speak. This is free country. What do they have in common? Sensor. That's exactly it. They all have the same sensor. Now, when I post this on YouTube, people typically write in the comments, no, it's not from Leica, it's from Sony. Okay, I get it. Sony makes most of the digital sensors in the world. That is for sure. But it is the same sensor, and it is a 60 megapixel triple resolution sensor. We also have different other sensors in the Leica universe, right? We have in the SL3S, for instance, we have a 24 megapixel sensor. But that's the most common element these 4 cameras have in common, is they have the same sensor. Now, this one here, the SL3, in my opinion, is the workhorse. If you're a professional photographer, and your photography is about getting jobs done and not about art, like my friend Phil Penman, for instance, he really is an artist, right? He's one of the best street photographers in the world, and probably a lot of people have met him in person, know him. Then you very likely shoot with an M camera, but if you need to get jobs done for magazines, you know, in fashion, in people photography, reportage, I think, is a little bit hybrid. We also go here into M territory, but this is the workhorse in this ecosystem of 4 cameras. It's very versatile. You have a lot of lenses. It's very quick. Since firmware 4.0.0, I think that's the actually correct number, this camera is super quick in autofocus. Is spot on. Is almost at the level as a sports and action camera. So what about this camera here? This camera here is about vision. This camera is also a workhorse and is my most favorite travel camera. I was in Geneva last week at Watches and Wonders, also at a Leica event. This is the camera I take with me. And why do I do this? Because I think it's the most universal combination of a camera body with a fixed mounted lens. 43mm is a perfect focal length for people photography, for instance. And it is also good for landscape, which I wanted to show you, but they're still working. And it has the perception, the visual perception of the human eye. That's why I think this is the most perfect camera currently available on planet Earth. And 43, that's a strong statement, right? And 43mm is, a lot of you will think normal focal length vision of the human eye is 50mm, but it's actually closer to 43. And that creates a combination which is unbeatable in terms of being distortion-free. In the way you see through the lens, you can almost replace your human vision, your perception, by just looking through the lens and seeing the scene in front of you. And that makes this camera very special. Now, when we talk about ecosystem, these two cameras here have the same platform. It's exactly the same platform. If we would switch this on here, and you go into the menu screen here, you can customize this matrix of 4 soft buttons here, 4 soft buttons here, and you can do exactly the same in the Leica Q3 43, the Leica Q3 28, and the Leica Q3 monochrome. And I was, I think sometime back, before the new firmware for the Leica SL cameras came, posting a video that menu features we see in the Leica Q3 monochrome will find its way into the Leica SL3, and voila, exactly that happened. And now you have two platforms which are ideal, complementary, and if you can shoot this piece, you can shoot this piece, and vice versa. You only need to learn one camera. And sometimes I get thousands of comments on the channel, of course, and people ask me, I have an SL3, would this be a good supplement? Or I have a Q3 43, would the SL3 be a good supplement? And my answer always is you're creating a perfect two-camera ecosystem. If you go lightweight, if you travel, take this one here. You can do everything with this camera, and there are lots of pictures I wanted to show you. You can do close-ups, product photography, people photography, beautiful people photography, because you have here the Aperture ring, an f2.0, and the Upper Summicron is, in my experience, but Dr. Kaufmann and Bern correct me if I'm wrong, but the Upper Summicron is the best of the best you can have. Now we have recently now an Noctilux 35mm. I'm completely in love with that lens, which I think comes very close. But Upper Summicron typically is perfect. And if you travel, just take this. This is the camera I had with me. I wanted to show a few pictures here. New York, Singapore, Hong Kong. Whenever I'm on the move, this is the camera I have with me. But for some occasions, if you shoot for a client, this is the workhorse. And since they are completely equal in terms of sensor, and since they are also completely equal in terms of graphical user interface, and let's call it more broad, the user experience, the way you communicate with the camera, you really have to spend the effort only once to get into these systems. Now, let's come to this one here. Why is the M camera so important in this ecosystem? Because it is the classical camera. It goes back in M and in the predecessors of M for decades. And the M system is, in my opinion, the camera system worldwide which has the most convenient lenses. If you look at that here, someone wants to catch it. If you look at this lens, this is very, very small. And typically they are also lightweight. So you don't carry a heavy burden if you have this around your neck, which I only do with this camera, having it around my neck. I don't want to strangle myself. So these are very, very capable lenses, very small, and a huge variety of options. Now, of course, you find heavy lenses in the M portfolio. If you look at the Noctilux 75mm, I had one picture prepared for you, but you know, we cannot change it. Is for people photography a real beast. The Noctilux 75mm is a very heavy lens, or the Noctilux 50mm f0.95, very, very heavy. But these lenses are very convenient also for travel. And guess what? I do professional photography since 2012, not always as my main profession, but taking it serious with photography since 2012. And I think about 3 or 4, some years after I started, I bought my first Leica M camera. For those of you who want to get a little bit nostalgic, at Photo Guns in Zurich, one of the shops that vanished, like Light and Bite last year. And actually, Ivo Crivelli, some of you might know him, he was heading the Leica store in Zurich. He sold me my first M camera. And guess what he said back then? He said, if you really want to learn photography, do yourself a favor and buy an M. And I can tell you, learning photography in a different way than I did with other cameras, with an M camera, that's the entry point to really start to understand photography. Because focus is manual. Of course, you can shoot semi-automatic here in aperture priority or in shutter speed priority, whatever but you learn photography with an M. Now, I want to come to this camera, and I was expecting it. I had this camera about a couple of months before it went live by the Leica announcement. And I knew it will trigger a shitstorm in the community. I knew it up front. And guess what? The comments started to rain in under my video, everything you need to know about the new Leica M EV1 and blah, blah, blah. And people said, this is not an M camera, it has no rangefinder, who came up with that bullshit, what is Leica doing? People were completely out of whack for this new camera. And I actually didn't know what their problem is. And I want to go quickly into that topic. So, you guys know what that is? That's the VisuFlex 2. And I will not do a vote and a poll like I did with the cameras. Be fair and honest with yourself and answer, not for us here, but for yourself, the question, how often did you shoot a longer lens in the Leica M portfolio, let's say with f1.2 or Go Extreme for the Noctilux 0.95, without a VisuFlex on LCD? Has someone ever shot a Noctilux with rangefinder? I did. And I tell you what, and I'm pretty experienced in the M system, half of my shots are almost sitting where the focus is supposed to sit, but not completely sitting where the focus is supposed to sit. And it's tiny little nuances, you know, sometimes the eyebrows super sharp, but if you look into the little veins in the eye, it's not really sharp. Sometimes the eye is sharp, but you really struggle if your depth of field gets very shallow to get these shots done without these focusing aids you have on all other digital cameras. And I would say probably 30-40%. If I shoot a Noctilux pure rangefinder, I just don't get it done. Being very honest with you, right? And now there is this big group of people watching my M EV1 introductory video and telling me this is no longer an M. But guess what? Half of those people shoot all the time with LCD or VisuFlex 2. Right? And what Leica did is, they did us a favor for exactly those people and built a perfect 5.6 million dots OLED electronic viewfinder into a Leica M camera, which lives and breathes M DNA. I can tell you, I've shot this camera, I tried it out before it came to market. When it was there, I asked Carlos to sell me one. And I think this is fantastic that you have it in here. And most of the time when I shoot rangefinder, I really learned to do it because Ivo Crivelli back then said you have to learn it. And if Ivo says that, back then I worked for Ivo, not for Gül. If Ivo says you have to learn it, I had to learn it. So I practiced, I trained, I became better, more shots were good, less photos which you throw away after a shooting and all of that. And I also should say I'm in love with rangefinder photography because it's, and that would have been on a slide I painted this morning at 5:55. Because a rangefinder gives you more than the scene. You see outside and you can anticipate what's happening next in the scene because you get actually more space outside of the frame lines. And I think that's a perfect, terrific way of composing an image. That's why I think rangefinder photography, after I learned it, was a big deal for me because it was like a completely new world. You see also what's going on outside of frame lines and you can start to anticipate what is coming next. But it has its restrictions. If you look into newer Leica lenses, and there's a bunch of them now, which have a closer focusing distance than 70 centimeter, or the older ones 1 meter. And that was kind of the rule of thumb in the Leica M portfolio. You had either 0.7 meter minimum focusing distance or 1 meter minimum focusing distance. But now you have a whole bunch of pretty capable lenses, which you can have a minimum focusing distance of, let's say, 0.4 meter, 40, 45 centimeter. And guess what? You cannot focus with rangefinder. It's not possible. So all of those hardcore Leica philanthropists out there who dropped me these comments about this sacrilege, which Dr. Kaufmann and his team did here, bringing an end camera with an electronic viewfinder, also those people cannot focus with these new lenses with the rangefinder. So they are forced to go to the LCD or taking a VisuFlex 2, because only then you can focus closer than 70 centimeter. And in my opinion, that's a big advantage if you have closer distance, which works for you, and then, which is unfortunately discontinued, you can also mount a near distance lens like Leica Pro 52 and get even bigger magnification. So that is, I think, the controversial discussion which happened after the Leica M EV1 was introduced. I think people are now used to it, that the camera exists. And one thing I wrote probably 50 times in comments, and I should have mentioned in the video, this, my dear Leica friends, is an option. It is an option for those of us who want to have Leica M DNA, Leica M shooting experience, native Leica M lenses, everything in terms of goodness that a Leica M is bringing to the table, but with an easier way to focus via electronic viewfinder. And with exposure preview, if you have the eye on the viewfinder, which you don't get here, of course, because this is an optical viewfinder, but it is an option. So what I said here on my absolutely ingenious slide, which I'm sure Dr. Kaufmann would have bought if he would have had the chance to see it, is that Leica gave us an option. And this is not the end of Leica rangefinder cameras. There will be future rangefinder cameras. And it is also to be seen in parallel to the Leica M11. And talking about ecosystem again, it's the same sensor, it's the same lenses, it's the same look and feel, it's the same control screen, not customizable by now, like we have it here, but the same kind of look and feel, user experience, graphical user interface, with one big difference. You have no longer a window here at Aperture, and you have here an electronic viewfinder. And I think for many younger people, and for many much older people who have eyesight problems, this is an option they can use, because if you have eyesight problems, an optical viewfinder becomes super tricky for you. And if you're younger and you're used to stare at LCDs because you grow up with your smartphone in front of your nose, you will be very happy to actually find an entry into true manual photography via a Leica M EV1. Now, I also want to quickly show you this lens here, and want to quickly talk about lenses. This is one of my most favorite Leica lenses. And most people will not expect that I'm saying this. This is a Summaron 28mm. 28mm I fell in love with when the Q3 28 was introduced. I think it's a fantastic focal length. And this is a 28mm lens, and it is very, very flat. And I wanted to show you why I believe that this is the perfect street photography setup. I wanted to show you a depth of field table, which I basically screenshotted yesterday in the evening after the dinner we had, and to give you a perspective where you see if you focus at a certain aperture, let's say f8, and you set the focus to 3, 4, 5 meter, you will actually no longer be in a need to focus at all, which the more professional Leica M photographers call zone or range focusing. And guess what? If you do that with a lens like a Summaron 28mm, you set it up before the shooting, you decide, let's say, for an f8, you look up in the depth of field table, what is the focusing distance I need to get everything reasonably sharp and in focus between 1.5 meter and infinity. You just set up the lens and then lightning fast. Not even the fastest autofocus camera in the world will beat this camera in terms of focusing speed, because the focusing happened up front. You anticipate it on the lens where the focus is supposed to sit. And that works perfectly fine with this lens here. I've shot with this lens very often in New York City. In New York is, I consider NYC to be safe, but this is a camera which is so non-intrusive You can go through Brooklyn or, you know, Soho, and you can just shoot and no one will even notice that you shoot. And that's why this is, in my opinion, an unbeatable combination. And why I personally think, since people now see Phil Penman, I don't know, who knows Phil Penman here in the room? Street photography, what? Almost everyone. Since he is always working now with an M EV1 in addition to his other gear, I think people got used to it and do no longer curse Leica for bringing this camera. But I think it's actually a next evolution in a parallel branch of a tree which will grow in both directions. You know, we'll see these type of cameras, well, for sure. And I don't look at Dr. Kaufmann because we don't want him to give any signals, but, you know, for sure, here we will also see something in the future. So this is the ecosystem. If I want to quickly describe this and summarize what this all means, here we have the most versatile of these cameras. Flexible, sometimes heavy, can do everything. Every discipline in photography you can handle with this camera. And by the way, another bridge in the ecosystem is, and I do this very often, you'll find a whole bunch of videos on the channel, is I mount a Leica M to L adapter to the camera body and shoot it with Leica M lenses. And actually one series of images I took in street photography in New York was a Leica SL3 with the very tiny Summaron lens here, which makes this a beautiful combination of a camera and a lens. This year, in 2024, I posted a video at the end of the year and said this is the best camera in 2024, and did not get a lot of shitstorm for that. People just accepted my statement, which I was very proud of, because the channel was much smaller back then. Now I made another video, I think last week, where I said this is for me the best ever travel camera. And there's interesting cost discussion always going on between the Hasselblad X2D Mark II and the XCD55V, because you get about the same field of view, different aspect ratio, but same field of view. But for travel, and if you really want to get something done in, and I repeat myself, all possible disciplines, landscape, I have here beautiful New York pictures for you, shot landscape with this camera, product photography, and if you want to get closer, just mount the near distance lens, the L Pro 52. People photography, beautiful. Really beautiful. I had the opportunity to shoot a very nice picture of John Goldberger at the event last week in the Leica boutique in Geneva, and it was before he was on the panel. I describe you the picture because I liked it very much. And his face shows the traces of his life, everything that happened to him, you know, being philanthropist, watch collector, photographer, what have you. And he has a very full of character face. And before he went into the panel with Dr. Kaufmann and the other people, there's a little couch. Actually, I think it's in the Academy room. And he was just sitting there and resting. And I had the opportunity, I had here a little bit of fuzziness because people were standing. I did shoot in portrait format and got him pinpoint sharp by at f2.0. And it just expresses a face of someone who has lived a very interesting life. And I think that is what this camera most expresses for me. It's the camera which captures the moment which you experience one, and then it never comes back. Oh gosh, this is becoming very serious. I'm almost done, guys, but I would at least like to show a few things. You're almost there? Yeah. This is my most improvised talk ever. Okay. But I kind of like it. Yeah. Thank you. So this is for me the best expression of what sometimes, in particular, if photographers are in art like Phil, what they say is you capture a moment which happens right now, it passes by, so time is fleeing, and then it never comes back. And that is, in my opinion, best expressed with the Leica Q3 43, but it is a professional workhorse. It has the same sensor. Oh my gosh. We're coming closer to Netflix now. Very good, very good. Street photography, serious photography. If you want to learn photography, go with a Leica M camera. That's the best you can do for yourself.
I want to quickly interrupt my live recording from the keynote at the Leica Summit and focus on this picture here, which I showed repeatedly already. And we talk here about a Leica ecosystem consisting of 4 cameras, 4 philosophies, 4 ways to see the world, but one common sensor at the core. a 60 megapixel full frame triple resolution sensor with 60 megapixel, 36 and 18 megapixel raw flexibility. So identical resolution, identical dynamic range, but totally different shooting experiences. The Leica SL3 is about control and versatility. I called it before the workhorse. It's a system camera which can master any shooting situation you might encounter. It has a huge range of lenses and, by the way, bridges to the Leica M system via the Leica M2L adapter. It has in-body image stabilization, high-speed shooting. It has highly capable autofocus properties, including tracking, continuous autofocus, and subject detection. It has professional performance for professional photographers and is built for maximum flexibility and for production work. This is the camera you take with you if you need to get the job done. The Leica Q3 43 is the natural perspective camera. Instead of perceiving your environment with your natural human eyes, you can as well look through the lens and in this way wait for the moment you want to capture and freeze a moment in time that happens right now and never comes back. The Leica M11-P stands for purity and discipline. The optical rangefinder extends what you see when you look through the viewfinder beyond the frame which you will capture later on. It's a true optical solution for focusing. It's more challenging, and I personally had to learn it as I described before and sometimes missed a shot. But once you master it, it will give you so much back because it slows down your photography. It almost transforms photography into contemplation. It's about anticipation and decisive composition. And then the Leica M EV1 gives you the modernized M experience. Full Leica M DNA, full Leica M shooting experience, but translated into a modern world where people are used to stare at digital displays. You have full exposure preview, you have all the focusing aids like focus peaking, magnification, live preview, and the Leica M EV1 bridges decades-old tradition in manual photography into a more modern setup, which, by the way, might be an entry point for younger people who don't want to learn optical rangefinder techniques any longer, or for older people who might have eyesight problems. Even the purist Leica shooters who say, I will never touch a Leica M camera with an electronic viewfinder, even they will rely on the LCD or the VisoFlex 2 for some of the more modern Leica M lenses, where you have a smaller minimum focusing distance, smaller than 70 centimeter, because the optical rangefinder will not support focusing at a distance smaller than 70 centimeter. I also showed in the keynote quickly the depth of field table for the Summaron-M, coming back to street photography, for instance, and want to quickly show you how this works. So if you want to set up your lens manually for lightning fast point and shoot, then stop the lens down to an aperture of f11. I'm just making one illustrative example here, and set the distance setting on the lens to 2.5 meter, and voila, you will have everything reasonably sharp and in focus between 1.2 meter and infinity. And no need to focus at all. You can just point and shoot. It's simple like that. And by the way, mentioning another of these many bridges between these four cameras in this four camera ecosystem, you can do exactly the same for the Leica SL3. And here's an illustrative example, a 50mm lens, and you focus at 18 meter and you stop down to an f8, and then the top display of the camera will show you that everything will be reasonably sharp and in focus between 9.1 meter and infinity, which is the same zone or range focusing technique you use typically on Leica M cameras, where you manually set it up. And here you can do exactly the same in the Leica SL system here in this example for the Leica SL3. And this is just a beauty, right? This is the camera, and I say it intentionally, this camera I shoot for myself. And I love the Safari design. I love the way I calm down and relax. I had very stressful times in my life over the last 25.5 years. And my way of meditation, contemplation, is taking, for instance, this camera and having 2 hours of just I, me, and myself. And then I calm down, I relax. It takes time to focus. You will get rewarded by a nice shot if you have the right lens.
And this is the purpose of the M system with the rangefinder technology for finding focus. But altogether, they have Leica DNA, and don't forget, that's my last word, this is only part of the ecosystem, they have more to offer. And if you occasionally want to show in my channel, I do not only speak about Leica, I think I speak about a lot of brands, but this is clearly the brand, and I say it very often and openly on my channel, which is closest to my heart because it gives me so much back when I take photos. But it gives you a lot back, and I think that makes a big difference to other brands which are maybe higher in megapixel, maybe with more features, you know, focus bracketing, for instance, something I always miss here, that we cannot do focus bracketing and then focus stacking on the computer. You might have more features, you might have more megapixels, but it doesn't connect with you, with your soul, and with what I said here on this camera, with that moment that you capture, that never comes back. Thank you for listening. Have some future.
Amazing.
I don't know.
Thank you. No.
Thank you.
All right, that's it. That's all I wanted to say about a very nice, very comprehensive ecosystem, which is built by these 4 Leica cameras. And I hope there were some data points interesting for you, how I personally consider these cameras, how I use them, how I see the similarities, but also the differences, the advantages and the disadvantages, and how you can combine them to get maybe a smaller complete ecosystem by owning a Leica Q3, 43 for instance, the 28 will also do the job, and a Leica SL3, or supplementing it by a Leica M11, M11-P or a Leica M EV1. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me your thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel, there's always more to come. Thanks for watching, stay safe and healthy, and of course, peace out.